Well, welcome to the Chosen Business Owners Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Reel, and today we get the opportunity and the pleasure to speak with Michael Shapiro, and he is the founder and CEO of TAPInto.net. And I'm just really excited to talk with you today to hear about your entrepreneurial journey and to hear about how you built TAPInto. And so, Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Michelle.
Absolutely. So if you want to maybe just get started and telling us a little bit about yourself, kind of how your entrepreneurial journey started and how you came to, starting TAPInto, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, about 15 years ago, I was an attorney in New York, and I was commuting back and forth from New Providence, New Jersey. And I had been doing that for about 5 years. And I learned that my son, who was 1 at the time, and today he's 16 and he's fine, but I learned that he needed open heart surgery. And it just really made me rethink what I was doing, because during his whole first year of life, I was like never home. So I wanted to do something where I could see my wife and son. I could do something that I really wanted to do, and I could help the community at the same time. And so I came up with this idea of starting an all online objective local news site for my old hometown of New Providence, New Jersey. And when I started it, the idea was, hey, I'm going to start this, and I'm going to try to make a career out of it. And what wound up happening was, within a couple of weeks, people in our neighboring towns, Berkeley Heights and Summit, reached out to me and said, hey, can you start this in our town? And I did. And then people in Chatham and Milburn, 2 other neighboring towns, reached out to me and said, hey, can you start this in our town? And I did. And I left my job in New York to do it full time. And for a period of years, I worked on building those 5 local news sites, their content, their revenue, their traffic, etc. But during that 5-year period, I kept getting requests from other people to expand to their town. But I had to keep saying no, because I couldn't do any more sites myself. And so I started thinking, how could we expand yet keep it really local? Because to me, the key being that the sites do original local news coverage every day, and they develop relationships with the local businesses in town. And finally, I came up with this idea of, in effect, franchising local news, looking for people who would want to start TAPInto in their own town as their own business, where we provide the training, the back end, the technology, the support, etc. So we started franchising about 10 years ago, and today we have more than 95 franchise TAPInto local news and digital marketing platforms.
That's amazing. So I was noticing it looked like you're in just 3 states, or are you in more states than 3? And if you are in 3, why just 3? How did you end up just in 3?
Sure. So we're actually in, currently we're in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Florida. We have 3 franchisees in Florida. We have 1 in Pennsylvania, 6 in New York, and then we have 87 or so in New Jersey. We can franchise in pretty much any state. But typically when we're franchising, it's people reaching out to us. And so being on a podcast like this is fantastic, because we get the word out to people who don't necessarily know that we exist, who might want to do this in California or Oregon or other states like that we'd love to expand to.
Yeah. So are you one of the only franchises that does this particular kind of, news broadcast?
To my knowledge, we're the only franchise that does online news in the whole country, which is pretty exciting, and it's interesting too, because there's a lot of in local news, there's such a need for local news. There's 10,000 towns in the country that have no local newspaper, no local news site. There's so many local newspapers that are either going out of business or downsizing. A lot of these local newspapers have been bought up by like multinational conglomerates that have then slashed the newsroom and closed these newspapers. So there's such a need for this. And so obviously it's my business, but it's also my passion, because to me, it's so important that people know what's going on in their town. And it's so important for the town to have like an engaged citizenry. And what we find in every town that we have a TAPInto site is that it brings the community together, because the people in the town know what's going on. The nonprofits in the town and the for-profit businesses in town have a way of marketing to the local residents, and the local residents then patronize those businesses and those nonprofits. So in every town that we're in, it creates this virtuous circle in every town that we're in, and it helps to build community, which I think is so important.
Oh, for sure. So then with the local businesses, you're actually doing marketing for them as well. So marketing for their company. So it's not just the local news about what's going on, but you're marketing for products and services for those companies.
Yeah, so our revenue model is 100% advertising based. We do not have a paywall, so it's free for everyone to read. It's also free to get the morning newsletter. We believe really strongly in not having a paywall or having a subscription because we believe people, regardless of their socioeconomic background, should be able to know what's going on in their town. So since the beginning, I've built the model based 100% on advertising, and that advertising ranges from content marketing, which is like one of the hottest things in terms of digital marketing, to traditional banner advertising, video advertising, email marketing, and social media marketing that our local franchisees, our owner publishers, are able to provide to those local businesses. One of the also kind of interesting things about the model is that when there are multiple TAPInto sites in an area, like there's only one per town, and sometimes like if towns share the same school system, they're grouped together as one TAPInto site. But most local businesses, they want to reach the people in their town, but they'd also like to reach people in towns nearby. So if there are TAPInto sites nearby, they're able to do that effectively and affordably, and that also helps to increase the revenue of all of our franchisees in the system as well.
Wow. And I love the fact that it's free because I find it so frustrating when I see a news article, maybe on Facebook or Instagram, and I go and tap on it and they're like, and that'll be $4.99 a month. And I'm like, no, I just wanted to read this article. I didn't want to pay $4.99 a month.
Yeah, and that to me, is really key because when you think about it, like our sites, obviously they're covering things like high school sports and events in town and what I call like heartstring stories. If there's someone who needs a liver transplant or things like that, but also part of their core coverage is covering like the town council meetings and the board of ed meetings and things like that, which to me is really important for democracy. And so if you have a paywall, there's a large portion of the town that doesn't know what their government is doing, which is not a good thing. And all the elected officials I talk with, they all feel the same way, which is we want people to know what's going on. We don't want people to not know what's going on. But if you have a paywall, you're automatically limiting that content and restricting it from people who either are not able to afford it or don't see it as a priority in their life to pay for local news, and then they don't know what's going on their board of education, their town council, their planning board, their zoning board, etc.
Right. So what would you say when you think about like print advertising, because you guys are in essence sort of print, but you're digital print. You're not a print magazine, right? So when you look at print advertising where people in business go out and they advertise on print, what would you say the biggest difference or the benefits would be more for doing digital marketing versus doing like print advertising that's delivered to your local mailbox?
Sure. Well, with online advertising, everything is trackable. So, for example, with advertising that runs on the site, we can tell you how many times that ad was seen, how many times that ad was clicked on by one of our readers. For content that's on the site, we can tell you how many people read that content, how much time they spent reading that content. For email marketing, we can tell you how many people opened the email, how many people clicked on the email, where they clicked in the email. So it's a lot more transparent for the advertiser and more accountable, which I think is really important. The other thing is that, whereas it used to be that the majority of people got their news in hard copy newspapers and stuff like that, today, a vast majority of people get their news online. So we're also reaching more people than you would in print. And just like with the advertising, all of our articles, et cetera, are fully tracked as well. So we can tell you, like, for example, this month, I checked our statistic this morning, our articles have been read over 7 million times this month. We have, 240,000 people that get our morning newsletter. Each site has its own Facebook page. So across Facebook, we have over 325,000 followers. And we can track this on a second by second basis on all of our sites in the network. And so that's really important too, to be able to tell, a potential advertiser, hey, here's how many people actually read our site versus here's our print newspaper, which, we mail to this many households or we drop on this many doorsteps, but you have no idea how many people are actually reading it, how many people are reading the articles, et cetera, which I think is really important these days.
Absolutely, because right, with print advertising, you might be able to track the call coming in from a lead, but other than that, you have no idea if 100 people picked up the ad and read it and only 5 calls, or so you have a lot. It sounds like you have a lot better idea of the ratio on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also, with online, you can do a lot of creative things. Like a number of our advertisers have featured columns on the site that they can write as often as they want, in which they can not only include unlimited photos, but they can embed video. You can embed video on any of the content. Businesses can put sales on our calendar, for example. Realtors can put up open houses. Funeral homes can post obituaries. All this kind of stuff are things that is very hard to do in a print newspaper, or can be very expensive. I mean, the main newspaper in New Jersey, actually charges $1,000 for an obituary now. And, with us, if you're a funeral home that's advertising, it's included as part of your advertising package. If you're not advertising, it's $50 to post an obituary on your local TAPInto site. So it's also very affordable for businesses and nonprofits to market themselves effectively.
Yeah. And so do you help them put together the ads and things for the businesses? Do you help create those and then have like maybe it going to like Facebook Messenger where people can talk to people that are like, do you do all of that kind of setup for the businesses that advertise with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started TAPInto, about 80% of businesses needed us to design their ads and their email blasts and things like that, which we did. Today it's reversed. Today it's 20% need those services, which we provide to them. So if they already have their artwork and they're good to go, that's great. But if they need it, we have independent graphic designers that can design the ads, the email blasts, et cetera, for them, and make it as easy as possible for them.
Gotcha. And I was reading, and it sounds like your readers have gone up significantly, because I think I read on your LinkedIn profile that you had, was it 20 million viewers last year? But it sounds like you just said you had 7 million alone in 1 month. So it sounds like you're breaking records for sure.
Yeah, I mean, our traffic continues to increase, like, every day, basically, which is great. And which I think is also, it just kind of tells you that people, really want to know what's going on in their town. There's this philosophy out there that people don't care about local news. And what we have found is exactly the opposite. They really do care. It's just a matter that in a lot of towns in the country, there is no local news. And so that's why you hear, oh, people don't care about it, but they care about it. There's just nobody providing it. And that's why, we're helping to kind of, what I say is like bloom the news desert that is taking place in so many towns in the country. One of the other trends that's occurring, which is not a positive thing, is not only about the local hard copy newspapers going out of business or downsizing, but then you have, corporations, you have politicians, you have political action committees that are starting local news sites with no disclosure to the reader that they're in effect captive. And that's really dangerous, because if you're a local reader and you're going to a site, you think it's providing you with objective news, but in reality, it has a political agenda to it. That to me is really dangerous. So like all of our TAPInto sites are required to be objective. We follow the Society of Professional Journalists ethics, and we also don't have an editorial page. So we don't tell people how to vote or what to think. We don't even have comments or anonymous comments. You can comment on the Facebook page for each site, but not on the site itself, because one, we want people not to worry about their kids coming on the site and reading the local news. We want it to be kid friendly. But second is that it's really important for trust and credibility that the sites be objective and provide original, objective local news reporting every day.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Like, just give people the information and then let them make their own decisions and come to their own conclusions, and do more research if they need to. And I love that. That's awesome. So what's your vision for the company going forward? I mean, 95, I think you said 95 franchises. I mean, that's incredible. And I mean, it sounds like you've got a lot of growth potential. What do you kind of see for your vision for the company?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to try to scale this, all over the country. And our systems here are fully scalable, meaning that we could be in 50 more communities a week from now. That's not an issue. The issue for me is finding the people interested in starting this in their communities. So I think the future for us are, one, finding people that are interested in doing it in their own community. Second is finding more people that are interested in creating like a mini network of TAPInto sites within our network. So, for example, someone who might say, "Hey, I want to do, I want to do sites in Palm Beach County, Florida," and then they create their own network within ours, which helps us scale more quickly, but also enable them to scale on day one. So that way they can not only get their local advertisers advertising, but they can get regional advertisers and even statewide advertisers to advertise who wouldn't be as likely to advertise on one TAPInto site, but would be likely to advertise on 10, 15, 20, 25 TAPInto sites. In New Jersey, we've grown that large, where we now have, regional and statewide advertisers that are advertising on 20, 30, 40 TAPInto sites in New Jersey. And then those franchisees get that revenue, and those businesses are able to reach that many people, and that local engaged audience in whatever towns they want to reach. So my vision is to, do what we've done in New Jersey in states throughout the country. Eventually, it may come to us trying to find a strategic partner that can help scale us across the country, because I can only do so much. I know where my limitations are, but I would love to see the model and TAPInto expand and help fill this news desert in all of these towns in the country that so need local news, and frankly, where these local businesses need a reliable, trusted place where they can do their marketing. So many businesses, are kind of in effect extorted to advertise on a place like Facebook, where their ads are up with really controversial and, I would say brand delegitimizing content that they really don't want their brand associated with, but they don't have much of a choice if they don't have a vehicle like TAPInto in their town. And it would seem to me that, most local businesses would rather market themselves locally to locally engaged readers on a site like ours that is, kid-friendly, objective, etc., than putting their dollars into social media where, you never know what your brand is being aligned with, which I think is not good for a lot of businesses.
So let's take, for example, if there was a, I don't know, like I'm in Colorado Springs, and I don't know if you have, doesn't sound like you have a TAPInto here, but if there was a company here in Colorado Springs or Nashville or, somewhere, anywhere, somewhere that you're not, Chicago, would they be able to actually be able to do advertising through you and still reach their community, or would it require having a TAPInto here in the community that I'm in or somebody else is in?
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't be able to reach their own community if there is no TAPInto site there. But like if they were interested in marketing to like people in New Jersey, obviously they could do that, or people in New York or Florida, etc. And that's why, the more that we expand to other states and other towns, the more we're able to help advertisers at all levels. Eventually, if we get large enough, we can attract national advertisers who would want to advertise on all the sites in the network throughout the country. What's also interesting is that, the people doing this, generally we look for people who have like sales, business development, or business backgrounds, who typically will either do this as a side business, and then they'll partner with or hire a writer or journalist to do the content side, or they'll do several TAPInto sites and do this full time. We also have a model where it's one person for a town and they do both the content and the sales. So like on the business side, it's typically 5 to 10 hours a week for one TAPInto site. The content side, that's the more labor intensive side. That's usually 15 to 30 hours a week. So what some people do is they'll get like 3 franchises in a given area. They'll do the business side, and then they will hire a full-time reporter who will do the content for those 3 towns. Sometimes, though, they'll partner with someone like, we have a lot of like husbands and wives doing it together, friends doing it together. We have a father and daughter doing it together where, the father does the content and the daughter does the sales, both doing it part-time. So you could do it that way as well. So it's a pretty flexible model. Interestingly, we also have a nonprofit model where a nonprofit could do this in their community. That works particularly well in a more economically distressed area, which you might not necessarily find people who have the wherewithal to be able to do this. Second is we have a university model where St. Bonaventure University franchised as a journalism practicum for their students, which is kind of cool. And lastly, we have a hard copy newspaper model where we have 6 hard copy newspapers that have franchised with us to be their online site, where they can keep their branding, et cetera, but they're able to take advantage of our really advanced technology at a fraction of what it would cost them to develop their own technology.
Wow, you've got a lot of opportunity with this. And it sounds like people have options too, like different ways. And that was kind of leading me to my next question, where I was thinking about what you said initially, that you started this so that you could have time with your family, and be home because you were working and you were gone all the time. Did this give you that? And then as you're scaling that, are you still able to spend that kind of time or, with your family?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my home right now, and this was before COVID. I was in my home as well, and I don't miss any of my kids' events. My son is all week has been playing in the rec basketball championships. I'm at every game, and I'm picking my son up from the bus stop after this today. And those were things I could never do as an attorney in New York, commuting back and forth from New Jersey. Nor can most people do. So I feel really blessed with what I'm doing. And I work probably as many hours as I did as an attorney, but I'm able to work on my schedule, and I'm able to see my wife and kids and really enjoy what I'm doing, which I think is really important.
Well, and are you finding that the people you attract to this, they have that same want and desire for their own lives to be more in control and to have time? And because that kind of stuff is priceless, to be able to be at every ball game, be at every competition, pick them up at the school bus, because those years go so fast. And, are you finding that people are drawn to that?
Yeah. A lot of people are drawn to that. And so so some people, they kind of leave their 9 to 5, so to speak, which is no longer 9 to 5, to do something like this. Others, what they do is they start it as a side business. They grow out the revenue and then leave their 9 to 5 once their TAPInto site is generating enough income for them to leave their full-time job. I also find a lot of people are empty nesters where the kids have left and they're like, hey, we need something to do, and we're involved in the community and we have these backgrounds, and let's do something fun where we're making a difference and we can make some money and go on some vacations and things like that and do that. That's one of the also cool things is that, people can do TAPInto from anywhere. So, a lot of times franchisees can set their stories to publish in advance. So if they're going to go on vacation, they can do that. They don't have to worry about their site while they're gone. But others, they will log in from Greece or wherever they are, and they'll post their content for the day and be able to do that. So there's a lot of flexibility with it, which is great. And to answer a question you haven't asked yet, you don't have to live in the town that you franchise. So we do have people who franchise towns nearby. We also have people who franchise towns, like in New Jersey. We have some that own like 5 TAPInto sites that are all over the state, where they've just chosen the communities they want to do this in. They have connections in those towns, and they're able to do that as well.
And so then do they have someone that's in the local town that's doing going and finding the stories for them then? They're just connecting with someone there?
Yeah. So what'll happen in that case, for example, and we have a couple cases like this where we have franchisees that own 5 of them at this point. And what they'll do is they will hire reporters, either part-time, full-time, or freelance. And those reporters will report on those communities in those communities. And then typically the franchisee will do the sales for those towns. But sometimes they might choose to say, hey, I'm going to hire a salesperson. So I'm just going to own the franchise, but I'm going to bring on someone to do the sales, and I'm going to bring on people to do the content. So that's an option as well. So it's a really flexible business model that basically can work in any community.
Wow. You just sound so passionate about this. are you just passionate in general about entrepreneurship or about what you're able to do for people or what? I mean, you seem super passionate about your company.
Yeah. No, I mean, I am like, and we'll be turning 15 as a company in October, and you know, yeah, and it just I like jump out of bed in the morning to get to work because like I love what I do. Every day we're helping people. We're helping businesses. We're helping people tell their stories. We are doing stories that are making a difference in people's lives. We just won in New Jersey. We won 4 local news awards out of like 10 that were given in the entire state. Franchise Business Review just awarded us one of the top franchises in the country, which was pretty exciting. And we just submitted like 25 stories for awards from the New Jersey Society of Professional Journalists, which last year we won like 15 awards from them. So it's not just a matter of, hey, we're putting out news and we're helping local businesses. It's like, it's high quality. And that to me is really important. It's doing it the right way. And if that means that we grow a little bit more slowly because we're doing it the right way, I'd rather do it that way than to have, 1,000 sites where people go to them and they're like, hey, this isn't offering me any kind of real news that I care about,
Right. Yeah, for sure. And so are you happy you took the franchising route for expanding the business and going in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, there are people who in this industry and others that like have a licensing model where they might like license their content management system or whatever. I'm really glad we went the franchising model, and the reason being is one, under a franchise, we're allowed to give unlimited support, which is really important because if you're a franchisee or owner publisher, you need a lot of support. You need a lot of training. You need ongoing support. And we provide it. I mean, not only do we provide initial training, but we have monthly live content and sales webinars that are recorded. So if they can't watch them live, they can listen to them later. We also have quarterly franchisee meetings, which are videotaped, where we provide continuing education. We have an intranet that has all kinds of prior, sales and content training and everything that they could possibly need. And then we also have a full-time director of content who's there for any content questions. They can review a story before it goes to publication. They can brainstorm story ideas. I'm, believe it or not, still available on the sales side, where I provide not only the initial sales training, but I'm there for any sales questions, to look at proposals before they go to an advertiser, to brainstorm before a franchisee goes in to speak with a client. We have 2 full-time customer service specialists that are there. They're there 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and they're there on the weekends for any kind of questions franchisees might have. They're available by text, phone, email. And then we have a head of operations that supervises customer service, but is also there to do all the billing, all the credit card processing, the advertisers, all the invoicing, all the collections. So the franchisees don't need to worry about that. And then we have 4 full-time developers that are constantly working on new features for the site and taking TAPInto to the next level. And we're under a license situation, we wouldn't be able to provide, a fraction of that. And then the other key thing with a franchise is the franchisee owns the business, whereas under a license, they don't. They're kind of renting the business. So our franchisees have the right to sell their franchise, and there's very little restriction on that. So one, they can build equity in the business and then sell it if they wish to. Sometimes what happens is a franchisee, say their husband or wife gets a job transfer. Well, then they need to sell their business. They can't keep running their local site, especially if they move out of state. So this gives them the flexibility to be able to do that, which is kind of unique because in most franchise situations, it's not as easy to sell the franchise. But second is that you have like a bricks and mortar location or whatever, which makes it a little bit more difficult to be able to sell. Whereas this is online, so it's much easier to transfer. Which is great as well. But I'm really glad we went the franchise route because then our franchisees are truly invested in the success of their franchise, and we're invested in the success of them, which I think is also really important. How we're actually structured in terms of a franchise, which is also kind of unique, is that the franchise fee they pay us, that only breaks us even. So if they don't succeed, we don't succeed. Only if they succeed do we make a profit. And I purposely built it that way because I want our interests to be 100% aligned. And so if they're successful, we're successful. And so we're driven to make sure that they're successful.
And so if they don't make that back in the first year or something, or how does that look? I've never heard of that before.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically what happens is, they pay us, there's a small initial franchise fee, and then there's a monthly license fee. Those fees cover our cost. On the revenue side, there's a 90-10 revenue split. They get 90, we get 10. That 10 and that 90 include credit card fee. So, for example, if a business pays by credit card, we really get 7%. But that percentage, whether it's 10% or 7%, that's our profit margin. So whatever revenue they bring in, that's the only profit that we make, and we only make a small percentage of that. So when they're successful, we make money. If they're not successful, then we take we break even. We don't make any money on their franchise, which I thought is really important because in most franchises, there's such a large initial fee that the franchisor makes money regardless of how successful the franchisee is. With us, it doesn't work that way. Which I'm pretty proud about because that to me it's pretty unique. And I love the fact that, our interests are 100% aligned. And I strongly believe in that we shouldn't profit off the franchisee if they're not making a profit,
Right. Yeah. Did you come up with that initially when you first developed the franchise, or did you start with another model and then say, whoa, we need to change gears on this?
Yeah, no, I came up with it originally, and I could tell you, our franchise council at the time thought I was nuts. They're like, no, you need to make profit on every franchise you sell. And I was like, no, that's not what we're going to do, And the way that I looked at it was the same way that in terms of TAPInto itself, because, I came into TAPInto, I didn't have a sales background. I didn't have a journalism background, and I kind of invented it and evolved it as I did it. So when we started to franchise, I looked at it the same way. I'm like, yeah, I know what other people do, but I want to make this unique, and I want to better what currently happens. So if I can do something that's going to better, and provide a better experience for our franchisees, I want to be able to do that. And and we still do that today. We have a franchisee advisory council, and we do an annual franchisee survey, and we take it really seriously. Whatever feedback they give us, we work on every single item and then report back to them about, what we did to address it and all that kind of stuff, which to me is really important because in a lot of franchise systems, you pay your money and you might complain or you might, have suggestions. And, it's those good franchisors, in my opinion, that then, reach out to that franchisee and say, hey, tell me more about this. What can I do to improve this? And then actually take action on that, which, I spend a good chunk of my time doing because we want to be the best we can be and provide the best experience for everyone. We have on our side, we have so many customers because we have the advertisers, we have the readers, and we have the franchisees. And we look at them all as really important customers that we need to not only satisfy, but be the best we can be, and that's the way I kind of run the company is that at all times, we need to be constantly trying to improve and better ourselves regarding each of those three customers that we have.
Yeah, it's amazing. It sounds like you have an amazing model, and really a model that gives a real low risk for somebody because you're equally invested in what they've got going on. So that's incredible. Starting out, is there anything that you wish you would have known when you first started franchising that, looking back, did you start to franchise right away, or how many years into having the company? I don't know if you.
Yeah, no. We started franchising 5 years into it. And 4 years into it, we actually did licensing for about 9 months. But then I discovered what the problems were with licensing. So then we converted those licensees to franchisees. We offer the conversion, and then we started franchising. So I think that, I think the things looking back was one, franchising earlier, meaning, instead of licensing, franchising from day one. I think that would have been something that we should have done, looking back. The other thing was, we, in the beginning, before we even had the idea of licensing, we raised a little bit of money, and we also had people help us for like sweat equity. And I think at the end of the day, that wasn't a good decision because we didn't we raised a lot of money, and we didn't really get all that much benefit out of the sweat equity. But I'm thankfully, I've still been able to maintain like a large majority shareholder of the company. But if I had that equity today, there's a lot of things I could do that I can't do because it is gone. So I think, when people are thinking about, and I say this to our franchisees all the time, like, if you're going to give equity in your business, understand that you'll likely never get it back. So you have to really think long and hard before you give equity, and it needs to be for something that's really important, and don't let people convince you, oh, this is important. You need to really, really think long and hard and whether this is truly important for your business to have. And so that would be another thing. And then I think third, the third thing was, I wish I had known earlier who our ideal franchisees were. For I would say the first 5 years we were franchising, we were primarily looking for writers and journalists to franchise. And what we found was they can do a great job on the content side, and they can drive really good site traffic. But most journalists, if they're doing the sales side, don't have like a sales bone in their bodies. There are some that do, but the vast majority don't. And I wish I had known that, because I went into it, as I mentioned, without any sales background. So I went into it with the idea that, hey, when we bring on franchisees, I can train anyone to do sales, and they're going to be successful, and I'm going to work with them, et cetera. But what we found was those writers who are the franchisees, they, on average, they make half what the people who have, or even less than half of what the people who have business backgrounds who own a TAPInto franchise make. So about 3 years ago, we reversed the model. So we said, instead of looking for journalists, let's look for business people with business development background, sales background, to be the franchisee. And then they can hire or partner with a writer or journalist to do the content side. That's the best model. We still are able to, and we do franchise to journalists who want to franchise. But in terms of them, we either say to them, look, you either have to have a sales background or you need to have a sales partner, because we want you to be as successful as our other franchisees. And so that was a key learning that, we learned fairly late in the process.
Yeah, and I noticed on your website that you lay that out. You've got I think you have like 5 or 6 things that make a good franchisee. And then below, if you're one of these, then this is probably not for you, which I think is great. If someone's looking into it and they go, oh man, I'm 3 of those 5 down there, this is maybe not a good fit, or I'm 3 of these 5 up here, this would be an incredible fit. And you lay the expectation out. And I think that's really neat,
Yeah, that's important, because, you don't, like, to me, you don't want to bring people into your system that are not going to be successful. Not only because obviously we don't make money if that happens, but more importantly is that person is not successful, and that hurts your brand, it hurts your credibility, et cetera. So to me, it's much better to take fewer people in as franchisees who are qualified and have the skill set to be successful, than to take 50 people in, of which only, half or a quarter are going to be successful. To me, that doesn't make any sense,
I'm just intrigued because you started out as an attorney and then you went to entrepreneurship. And did you ever, before becoming an attorney, dream of being an entrepreneur, or was it totally driven just by your mere circumstances and your life circumstances? So, you just needed a change and you needed to find something, or had you ever thought about it before that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always been entrepreneurial, but never had a way to to put it into action, So I always had all these ideas in my head, but never had that opportunity, because I was always working all the time and commuting and all this kind of stuff. And even before that, like even when I was in law school and other places, I was still in that kind of frame of mind where I have this idea or that idea, but I don't have a way to do it because I don't have the capital to do it. I don't have the time to do it, et cetera. And so, by doing this, it kind of brought everything together, because I had that entrepreneurial spirit. I was always somebody who was very involved in the community, so that helped with that. The fact, obviously, with my wife and son, that was important. And so this kind of brought all those worlds together, and it was kind of like the perfect storm in a good way that enabled me to do this.
Yeah, I love your story, and I love the motivation behind getting you started. In this business, I think just that in and of itself is incredible. Um, so it sounds like it's been fairly easy. Have there been any really tough times in building this, or things that you look back on and go, that was really hard?
Oh yeah. I mean, just like any business, it's like a roller coaster. So you're always going to have ups and downs. I mean, I think one of the things, and I forgot to mention this before, in terms of things that I would have changed, in the past, was for the first like 2 years or so that I was doing TAPInto, I was mostly doing the content side. I wasn't involved on the sales side, and I had commissioned salespeople doing the sales. One of the salespeople was pretty good, but in terms of it, we weren't making, when I first started. This is before franchising. We weren't making money. We were losing money like the first 2 years, because like I was investing in all this technology and all this kind of stuff, and my my bank account slowly went to zero, and then my 401k started to go to zero, and my wife was like, well, what are we going to do? Because like, we're not making money. And then, I talked to one of our first advertisers, and he's still an advertiser today, and still like really supportive. And he said, Mike, like, you're the best salesperson the company has. Why aren't you out selling? I'm like, I've never sold anything. I don't know how to sell. And he's like, well, you figured everything else out. I think you can figure out how to sell this, how to sell advertising. And so I put my mind to it, and then I took the sales side of the business, and then I brought on people to do the content side of the business, and it turned the whole business around. And that was a really key thing to learn. And I think that's important for anyone looking into franchising or starting their own business, that in general, they're their best salesperson, because they're the one who's most passionate about it. They know the product best, which I think is really important. And so that was a key thing that I learned, which I think obviously made a huge difference in terms of the company. There's always been other, tough times. I mean, where, things will happen, and you just have to kind of be even keel. And I tell this to our franchisees too, because, just like TAPInto itself is my business, their franchise is their business. So they're going to have ups and downs, and they just have to kind of, go with the punches, so to speak. And tomorrow is going to be a better day, and you just shake it off, and you get up and you jump out of bed, and you have the best day possible. And I think that's really important, because I think, sometimes I'll go through a string of like a week or two where I'm having sales appointments and I'm not closing those sales. And, it gets in your head, and you're like, hey, am I doing something wrong? What's going on? And then sure enough, the following week, you close 3 sales, and you're like, see, it wasn't me, and that still happens to me today. So, but that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. You might have a reader reach out, and they're particularly nasty. Well, you know what? You have like 30,000 people in your town. That's one person. Don't let it get to you, respond. Don't blow your stack. Be even keel, be respectful, and move on. Don't worry about it. And that to me is also really important. Any kind of communication you have, particularly in writing, I always was taught, and this goes back to law school, imagine if it's published on the front page of the New York Times. So anytime you respond to someone, respond in a way. If you have to wait a day to respond because you need to cool down, do that, but respond in a very calm and nice way, that nobody can use that against you, and move on, because you have bigger fish to fry than that one reader in town who's making your life miserable that day.
I I love that. That's a golden nugget right there. I love that. Um, and I want to honor your time, because I know we talked about 45 minutes, and I think we're almost there. But I have a couple more questions for you if you have a little.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
What sounds like from your tough times, you're able to then, that helps you to relate to your franchisees, from the things that you've grown through, and the things that, have come up for you. And so that's incredible, I think, to be able to you can look back then on those tough times and say, okay, this is going to benefit somebody else, later on, that's running into the same thing you are, because you've been in the trenches, you've done it, you've been where they are, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And like even today, like I'm still fully involved in terms of the content side and the sales side of the business. So I still go on sales calls. I go with franchisees sometimes to their local sales appointment. And I even do like regional sales. And so like I'm hearing, from those advertisers what their objections are or what their questions are. And then I'm able to do sessions for our franchisees on, hey, here's something new I learned, that kind of thing. And also on a daily basis, if not an hourly basis, franchisees reach out to me and say, hey, Mike, like I just got this letter to the editor and I think it might, be libelous. Can you give it a read? Or they might say, hey, like I had a franchisee right before this call. It was like, hey, Mike, and he's been with us a long time, but he said, hey, Mike, I had this meeting with this advertiser. Can you look at this proposal and give me feedback? Because I'm not sure which way to go with it. And I'll give them feedback based on my experience with an advertiser of that kind of business and that kind of budget and things like that, which I think is really important. I even do most of our monthly sales webinars still. We'll bring in outside speakers for some of them, but I still do most of them where I will take a given topic and break it down and really go through it with our owner publishers. Even this Friday, I had this idea and it came from one of our franchisees. They said to me, hey, Mike, for franchisees who've been here a long time, like, your initial training for franchisees has evolved over time, and it is available via recording on our intranet, a video. But they said, it'd be really great if you could do this live for us. So I'm doing that this Friday, and I particularly invited all of our franchisees that are 3 years and older, but all of them are invited to attend. And we have a huge turnout for it this Friday. So that's pretty exciting because like, they're going to get that training that we now provide to a first-year franchisee coming in, because so many things change over a period of 10 years, and so you need to stay on top of it. And so this will be a really good thing that we'll be doing,
Well, and you sound like a very hands-on franchisor, and you're their mentor and the person that it sounds like that they turn to and that they feel good turning to. I mean, with the fact that they're calling you to look over proposals and, help them through the, the daily grind of things. And so just out of curiosity, then do you have someone that you mentor with for doing your, running your franchise, or is there anybody that you look to for advice or?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had some people like that. I mean, but it's a space that's so unique that there's really nobody for me to necessarily, relate with. There are people, for example, at the local media association that I have, calls with, I would say probably like bi-monthly, where these are people who are experts in local news, and they'll say, hey, Mike, what are you working on? And here's what we're hearing and that kind of stuff, which is helpful. And, I have a couple of people who I will turn to say, hey, I had this idea. What do you think about it? That kind of thing. But the space is so, in terms of, franchised online local news sites, there's no one else doing it. So it's hard to, like, if there were other people in the space, I could be like, hey, let's have like a monthly call where we can talk about stuff, but that doesn't exist, So, but like these different people that I mentioned are good because they are in local news. And so while they're not in franchising, they understand what's going on in local news, and they're involved in terms of like local business marketing. So those are people who, while they can't, relate to me on the franchise level, they can in terms of local news and local business marketing, and I value their opinion on those kinds of things.
Awesome. Well, so this is my last question. It sounds like you are definitely in an industry that you're trailblazing the way, that you're kind of pioneering it really. And so I just want to ask, do you have any exciting projects you're working on or will be working on in the future that you want to share? Anything more that you want to share about what you guys have going on?
Oh yeah, we always have a ton going on, but I mean, one thing we're working on right now is a front end redesign of the site, and so that's a big project that we're working on. And then towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, we're going to be redesigning our app And so that's a big project. And then end of next year, we're going to be redesigning our billing system. It's a really cool system, but all of our technology is proprietary. Like we've built it from scratch. But this billing system, it's a really integral part of our business, but we really want to make it more user friendly and more sophisticated. So that's basically like the next year and a half on the development side. In terms of other things, we're always introducing like new technology or technology we haven't been using that we think will be better for our franchisees. So like, for example, starting January 1st, we started using DocuSign for them to be able to have their contracts actually signed at meetings and stuff. Before that, we were doing like hard copy contracts. So that's been a big change that we're doing this year. But we're always looking for things like that that can improve what we're doing, make it more efficient and more effective for everybody involved. And so those are a couple of key things that we've been working on.
So exciting. And Josh, I have one more question.
Sure.
If someone is looking at franchising, or being a franchisee, purchasing a franchise, what would you say to them? Like, what would be the benefit in owning a franchise? Why get into the industry? Maybe, something if someone's just kind of, searching out that avenue for business.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're somebody who's looking to own your own business, and have like a quality of life that you can control, I think a franchise opportunity is really important and is a great way to go. And I think it's somebody who is also looking, in our case, to also make a difference in their community. A lot of franchise systems, it's just purely business, and that's fine. But with us, I think, the idea that you want to give something back to your community and you want to improve your community, I think is a key part of it. Obviously, we want people who want to have successful businesses and they want to make money. But ideally, it's also somebody who cares about their community or the community they want to do this in and wants to improve that community and make it even stronger.
I love that. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I've learned a lot from you, and I wish you all the best in the future, and I look forward to seeing you grow to 200, 300, 400. I hope you come to Colorado Springs someday. I hope somebody here opens up one of your franchises. That would be awesome. So
thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. And if anybody's interested in information, they can go to starttap.net. There's initial information. We have a monthly webinar they can sign up for, and they can even sign up to get on my calendar and have a one-on-one with me where I can talk with them. So I really appreciate the opportunity, Michelle, and I really enjoyed speaking with you. And thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for sharing where they can reach out to you. I was going to ask you that next. So thanks so much. Thanks for spending some time with me today. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.